And welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 299. Today, I'm going to address a really important point raised to me by Anton, which was this notion of he's struggling with this idea of should we be pursuing perfection or should we be pursuing creativity? And are these things mutually exclusive? What happens if we obey the rules of photography? Do we just end up with a dull image? So I'm going to be kind of deep diving into this. Also, Gunilla sent us an image for feedback, so we'll be looking at that as well. On top of that, there'll be an update of Smug points, and of course, next week is the 300th anniversary of these podcasts, or 300th episode. Not 300th anniversary. That would make an awful lot of podcasts. Anyway, 300th episode. So we'll be looking at telling you all about what's coming up for that. So stick around and we can make a start. So yes, welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 299. Yes, next week is the big 300th episode, so I'll talk a little bit about that later. Today, we are looking at the notion of, lovely idea by Anton. But actually, first of all, if you happen to be watching live here now, leave a comment. Let me know you're here. Let me know where you're from. Let me know what the weather's doing. All the usual kind of chat we can get started with. Even if you're not watching live, you can still leave comments below. Just understand that I won't be able to respond to them in real time. Still helps the algorithms though, whether you comment live, whether you comment below. And of course, do hit the all-important like button. I'm never entirely sure. I always think it's that side, but I think it's actually just down there. You can click that. I think, yes, it's all about algorithms, and one day maybe we'll get picked up, and maybe we'll go viral, maybe we'll go global. Maybe these 300 episodes are just the beginning of something glorious. Who knows? Right, I see we've got a few people in already, so let's see what we've got. Lisa says, good morning from a cloudy, soon-to-storm Maryland. Gunilla says, hi, it's raining here in Ireland, about 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, so it's summer rain. I'm at home today in front of my computer. It was a busy week in Sweden, so it's nice to be back. Janet says, hi from a rainy Petawawa. No idea where Petawawa is. Could well be in Canada. Janet's usually up in Canada somewhere, but, you know, who knows? Could be travelling. Expecting 50 to 100 millimetres of rain today. That's quite a lot of rain, I think. Marcy says, good morning, from a city named after a fictional game show for pirates. Fictional game show. I haven't a clue. You'll have to. Lisa says, so thanks. Marcy says, hi, y'all. Right, and people saying hi to each other. Stacey saying, good morning, is going to be hot and humid here today with rain in the forecast. So I think Stacey's in Pennsylvania? No. Yes, I think. Susan says, hi from a pleasant Sunday afternoon in Kakubri. The sky's clouded over, but it is pleasantly warm. Yeah, here in Castle Douglas, just 9 miles up the road, it has clouded over a bit. It is summer, but it's, still under 20 degrees Celsius. Ronan says, lovely day in London. Hi, everyone. Sandy says, hello from a sunny Alberta. Meg joins us and says hello to everyone. And John's joined us from mid-Ohio, slightly wet. Fictional game show for pirates, Winnipeg. Right. See, too smart for the rest of us there. Janet says she is north of Ottawa, near Ontario, UPwKA border. Right. Okay. Get out your maps. Go and check out. There's enough here to go get a sense of where in the world is everybody. Maybe at some point I ought to go to pull up some kind of map and just sort of say, hey, this is where Janet is. This is where Marcy is. This is where John is. And all that kind of stuff. Might be a bit of fun. Anyway, right. Yes, Stacey says yes, Pennsylvania. Hatboro. Right. Okay, so we have people. We have a topic. We have a podcast to make a start. So what I'll do, let me tidy up my desktop a little bit as per usual. It's always this sort of slight little drag things about so that I can make a little bit more sense of, right, where are we? I need to slide that bit over and then I can see that. Quebec, not UPwKA. Near Ontario / Quebec. Okay, yes, that makes more sense. It's really difficult to work out where somebody in the world is when there's spelling mistakes, because there's too many different possible interpretations. Right, so, where are we at? Okay, tell you what. No, I'll keep these glasses handy. Let's make a start. So let's just flip over, get rid of all the blurb down the side. And we'll make a start. And what I'm going to make a start with is, now some of you may remember a few weeks ago, when at our last feedback session, Anton sent in an image where it was an evening image, nighttime image. There was a out of focus bin in the foreground. There was a silhouetted church spire in the background. There was a barrier for a railway kind of in the midground. And he was struggling to edit it, and so I set about editing. Anton wasn't here at the actual time, but I essentially cut out the bottom part. The bin felt superfluous. Anyway, afterwards, Anton sent me quite a long email. I was interested in what I'd done, but it also sort of set up a whole bunch of different kind of questions. And within it, there was a whole little section, really, which I'm going to read to you. Anton's fine about that. Because it somehow kind of got to the heart of something I think is sometimes misunderstood in photography in quite a lot of circles. And it overlaps stuff that I've talked about before. And I'm going to use example photos that some of you with longer memories from a couple of years ago might recognise. But let's make a start. So what Anton said, amongst his other stuff, so the key bit he said, I have a very elusive relationship with photography and constantly struggle between contradictory ambitions and thoughts. On the one hand, I want to know the technicalities of the art, the theory behind exposure and composition and all that. And on the other hand, I don't want to be limited by the technicalities. And I constantly have an urge to push and break the boundaries, because the last thing I want to take is a boringly perfect common photograph. I think a boring photograph can paradoxically be interesting in various subtle ways, and perfection is worth striving for as long as you consider it a direction rather than a destination. And the common can be used intentionally as a point of relatability to do the observation, deconstruction, analysis. But I'm personally not interested in producing or even viewing photos that check all the boxes. I think the risk of leaning too hard into the technical is that it might result in a very high quality, inoffensive photograph that would be perfectly at home on the wall of a dentist waiting room or something. On the other hand, if one becomes too obsessed with avoiding this, then I think they risk stunting their own learning of the craft and not taking the criticism seriously. Suddenly I noticed Gunilla said she can't hear or see me, but Janet's saying no audio problems for me. Not totally sure. If somebody wants to drop into the chat, maybe if Gunilla tries refreshing the page, might work for her. She said I tried to start again. Okay. Where was I? Yes. So Anton goes on to say, I constantly find myself thinking about where I am on the spectrum because I encounter the two extremes a lot. I think there's something missing. Now, okay, I'm just realizing this is going to take quite a while. Let me go into the bit. Okay, so what he's talking about. So he's got a friend he goes out shooting with, but his friend is like not that interested. He takes the position that learning technicalities like composition theory and colour grading is fairly pointless because it's all subjective. Okay. Okay. There's a lot coming into this. And he then goes on to say, on the other hand, I constantly encounter people who lean too far in the other direction. I try to avoid social media, but occasionally I browse Reddit. I've mentioned this before, but there are often people who are obliviously and ruthlessly criticise the photographs of beginners by their lack of adherence to technical rules, without taking care to at least phrase it so the person doesn't feel like they just want to throw their camera in the trash and never do photography again. Okay, so what we have here is several different points, and I want you to hold on here and bear with me because I'm going to run through them and I'll make it all a bit clearer. Okay, good. Looks like Gunilla's back here again. So just on that very last point about the fact that Anton says, you know, you can go to places like Reddit where you get people who can be really brutal about their feedback on people who are beginning, starting out with their photography, whether intentionally or not. And I'm very aware of that on my own journey with photography. I used to belong to a site where I could get feedback, and some people were absolutely brilliant, and some people were just complete, insert derogatory word here. They would tell you what was wrong with your photo, but in a sneery kind of way. Like, what idiot would ever think about doing that? And what's that? That's a power trip. That's not helping anybody. So it's one of the whole things that I've talked about, my real drive in doing the critique section here, and is to be able to give feedback in a positive, encouraging way. We're all learning all the time. But what Anton talks about here is that people get sneered at for not doing something technically right. And in essence, his whole point is that there feels like, or he gets trapped in this idea, that on the one hand, there's the pursuit of technical perfection. But that can lead to boring photos. Technically perfect, but yeah, where's the soul? And on the other hand, you can have creative, energetic photos that break the rules. But if you go too far down that line, then, you know, maybe it's not going to work. So how do you deal with this? Now, here's the key thing. I'm going to say this key thing, and then I'm going to repeat it several times, and I'm going to show you all sorts of examples, and the next 20 minutes or so is going to be about addressing why this is a false dichotomy. It's not an either or. It's a misunderstanding. You could take a shortcut phrase and say tools, not rules. Okay, all the understanding that you have about photography, all the technicals, understanding ISO, shutter speed, aperture, lighting, difference between backlight, side light, reflected light, soft light, hard light, compositional tools, rule of thirds, symmetry, asymmetry, use of diagonals, use of verticals and horizontals, echoes, brackets, repetition. All these things are tools. They all are different tools you use under different circumstances in order to help you communicate your idea, your message, your mood, your thought. Because when we take a photograph, we expect somebody else to look at it, we are trying to communicate something in that photograph. Now, it doesn't have to be War and Peace, it doesn't have to be this great long story, but we are trying to communicate something. And it might be, I love the way the colours complement each other on this, or the way the colours clash on this, or I love the dark moodiness, or I love the kind of the way that it reminds me of the sort of smell of summer rain, or I was having so much fun listening to this band, or here I got really caught up in the way that line of the crack in the pavement has little kind of shoots coming out of it. And to me, there's a story of nature retaking over human kind of constructs. Whatever it is, there's something there. There's something you are trying to communicate. Now, how well can you communicate that, right? And how well you communicate that, and how easily you communicate that, and how quickly you manage, when you're sitting there with a camera going, click, that doesn't look right, how quickly you can solve the problem is down to your understanding of how the technicalities work, of how these compositional guidelines work, of how light works. And all these are tools in your toolbox. None of them is exclusive. None of them is the one that you have to have. Many of you know I hate the term rule of thirds because it gives over the idea that it's an unbreakable rule. It's not, it's a guideline. Generally speaking, take a photo of something, and if the subject's in the centre, if you move it off centre, somehow it looks a little bit better. A lot of the time. Not always. And not always means it's not a rule. But it is a guideline, and it's a useful one. Sometimes if your photo isn't working, move the camera a little bit to the left or right, shift your subject off centre, and suddenly, miraculously, you're able to communicate what you were trying to put across that little bit easier. So it's a useful one, but it's not a rule. And people who then go, oh, but I put something in the centre and it worked better, therefore I broke the rules, have misunderstood what it's about. It's not a rule, it's a guideline, it's a tool. It's a tool that you apply in certain circumstances. Now, if you only have the understanding of one tool, if rule of thirds is the only thing you understand about photography, you're going to be very, very limited. And a lot of what I talk about on these podcasts is showing you all these hundreds of other tools that you can use, and then how we can apply them in a whole variety of circumstances. What Ronan says, you can learn the rules of photography in a few weeks, but you can spend the rest of your life refining them. And that's kind of true. You know, it's like, you know, you can learn the rules of chess. You can learn, or it's like, if you want to write something, okay, you can learn the rules of grammar. Now, understanding where a capital letter should go, where a full stop should go, when you should use brackets, the usefulness of a comma, right? All these things are useful tools in order to be able to communicate the story you wish to tell. Okay, if you don't understand where to stick a capital letter and you're suddenly putting it into the middle of words, if you don't understand where a full stop should go and it goes in the wrong place in the sentence, you can change the meaning, you can distract people, you can stop the message getting across. So understanding a bit of grammar is really useful if you want to communicate through writing. But you can't judge a story based on how well somebody has used a semicolon instead of a colon. Right? Or whether they're using an M dash or a minus sign or a, you know, it's because the story is the important bit. But the story without the grammar, without an understanding of the grammar, isn't going to be communicated as well as it could have been. But if you only judge the story on the technicalities of the grammar, then you've missed the whole point. And so it is with photography. Photography is a whole bunch of, there's technical skills, there's compositional understandings, there's stuff about light, and primarily, more than anything, is about understanding story. You're led by the story, you're led by what is it I want to communicate, and then you use all these tools, everything at your disposal, from the point that you go click right through to your whole editing process, in order to be able to communicate that as powerfully and precisely as you can. So what I'm going to do here is, now for those who've got long memories and go back a couple of, about two and a half years or so, one of the things that I did was, back, some of you may remember the cup challenge. Now, not everybody was here at the time, not everybody watched that. It is a couple of years ago, don't expect everybody to remember it. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the photos of that, and I've updated it as well, to show you what I mean, right? So what we're talking about is that if you understand all these tools that you have available to you, then you can pretty much make anything look interesting. Honestly, you can make a piece of crumpled paper look interesting. You can make a discarded candy wrapper look interesting. You can make a piece of string look interesting if you understand all these other different kind of compositional light tools and everything else. Okay. So as an example, we're going to take a mug. Okay, I'm just going to take a mug or a cup and show you how you can, by adjusting and understanding these different ways of using the camera, these different tools that you have, you can create multiple stories. You can dramatically change the narrative depending on the tools that you decide to use. Okay, well, as Marcy says here, it's easy to learn or explain the rules of a particular art form. Teaching art negates the rules, in my honest opinion. Overthinking is the true enemy. Teaching art negates the rules, negates said rules. Again, stop thinking rules. Start thinking tools. Okay, tools, not rules. Okay. Probably it's a slogan somewhere with a Z at the end of tools and a Z at the end of rules. Yeah, I don't know. We could have it on a t-shirt with a tools, not rules. You can do it. I'm sure somebody else has got it out there. But stop thinking rules. Start thinking tools. Okay, what tools have you got to fix it? You know, like if you're a carpenter and you only have a hammer, fine, you can knock the nails in really easily. But if you want to saw the bench, you know, saw a piece of wood and get it fitted, you're screwed, okay? The more tools you have, the more things you can make. The better things you can make, the better tools you've got. But None of these tools are going to make any difference if you've never learned which way round to hold a hammer or which way round to hold a saw. Okay, so it's not about the rules. It's not rules. It's guidelines. It's tools. So, okay, Marcy says I was actually trying unsuccessfully to say what you just did. Okay, cool. Right. So let's just do this for a moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a mug. And here we have a megalicious mug. And just for anybody, I mean, obviously people who've been around for less than a few years probably don't know the backstory. So my daughter Meg, who joins us very often here, there was a point pre-COVID when she was going to start her own little business, baking business, gluten-free business called Megalicious. Now, then 1 week before, 1 week, we had the launch date set up for 21st of March, 2020. That was going to be the big launch. And of course, COVID then hit. Launch didn't happen. Whole world changed. The little business never took off. Anyway, point of that being, we had logo done, we had mugs done, little bits and pieces. So this is a Megalicious mug. Now, a little bit of backstory, doesn't really make a lot of difference. Point being, anyway, this is a mug. Now, the photo of this mug is the kind of photo you would get in a catalogue for a mug. If you were thinking about buying one of these mugs, it gives you a reasonably good idea of what the mug would look like. You can see that it's white. You can see that it's got the kind of green and blue colourings on it. You know roughly what a mug size is like. You can see by the way the light's reflecting, there's a certain kind of thickness to the rim. So essentially, it's a good catalogue. It's a passport photo equivalent of what the mug is. What's it telling you? It's telling you, it's like a passport. It's an identification thing. Right, now with this mug, it's lit kind of in an all-round kind of, might be 2 lights, 3 lights, or lights and a reflector or whatever, just to kind of create this even sense of light against a white background. Now, what happens if we just change the lighting? Exactly the same angle, position, everything else, but now we just go window light. Okay, so here off to the right, I've got, this is, kitchen window light coming in, right? Lighting. We've gone from an all-round light to a single window light source off to one side. Okay, and the feel and the mood and the sense of what you're looking at changes completely, right? So if you've got an ordinary mug and you say, actually, I want to add just a little bit of drama to it, we add shadow, right? Shadow, and it's giving a sense of depth. And it's just that simple thing of changing the light. Everything else is the same, right? All the camera settings are the same. The angle is the same. Everything is the same except for the light. And it changes it, right? If you understand that, then you are able to go from that to that. And if you want something more like this, you understand that you go from an all-round light to a side light. Okay? Quite simply, that understanding, is this a rule? No, it's not a rule, it's a tool. What's the truth here? Is that a truer picture of the mug than this? No, they're different versions, right? There is no, the other big thing, again, some of you know, one of my big bugbears is the idea that the camera always tells the truth. Camera never lies, right? Absolute BS. The camera isn't capable of telling the truth as we perceive it in 4 dimensions, 3 physical dimensions, plus through time and our ability to move, right? Camera, 1 angle, 1 moment in time, 2 dimensions instead of 4. It's a representation and the brain fills in all the rest of the details. And what we do is we manipulate that image in order to get the brain that's looking at it to fill in the details in the way that we want them to fill it in. Okay, really important to understand this. What then if we do change the angle? So, same mug, same lighting, same position, same distance from the window, only now I'm shooting from above. Okay, totally different. Completely and utterly different feel to that. Exactly the same mug, different position. Right? Becomes really important to know that just by moving the camera from here to here, we have had a profound change of what it is we're looking at. What if I turn the candle, right? The handle now. So here, the handle's sitting behind the mug, so it's lost within the shadow. Not lost within the shadow because we've got little reflecting bits over here where we can see it. But we turn it, and now that changes the form of the shadow as well. Okay? So this, they're all exactly the same mug, taken from about the same distance, either changing the light or changing the angle or turning the mug, and we are creating a different photo again. What if we take, this is currently an empty mug, what if we put something in it? Well, that's changed it, right? Now we've got coffee in it. Okay, and that gives us a different feel. That takes us from it's a mug as an object in itself to it's a mug containing coffee, containing liquid. Reminds us what the mug is for. The mug is a container for drink. Now, imagine we had lemonade in there. Imagine we had hot chocolate with squishy cream and marshmallows and sprinkles, right? It would look completely different again. Or if if you had it full of ice, or if it was an iced coffee, that would be different again. What if then we had the residue, the remainder of, in this case, just coffee grounds and stuff on it? What if we then take that and we change the angle of it? So now, instead of sort of seeing it from above, you get here. You can see the coffee grounds over on the right here, on the edge of the right. Same mug. Okay, how many different stories are we creating with this? Or what if we change the angle? We now shoot from underneath, right? So we've now got it hanging slightly off the edge of the table. We've got this here reflection of the kitchen window, little bit of out of focus wall in the kitchen wall in the background. Or what if we go back to something like this, and we pull out and we extend and we go to this. So this then being the cover card that I created for this episode. Right, now, in this case, what I've done is I've just used Photoshop expand, basically. I've expanded it. And I expanded it and expanded it and expanded it. Until what we've got is we've now got that mug we've gone for minimalism. We've gone for this little dot in this large empty space. And it really kind of creates a different kind of emphasis, quite a powerful, draws your eye to that mug. Also the shadow, I think the shadow becomes much more interesting and stronger as well. Okay, so this image is this image. It's this image pulled back and taken from a different height. In this case, I've just expanded the paper out in Photoshop. Right, okay, so all these different ways of just a single mug. Which one, again, is the truth? There isn't the truth. There are truths. There are little truths with, inverted commas and little t's. There's no truth in big capital letters, right? Which one is technically perfect? Well, they're all technically fine. The thing's in focus, right? You can see what it is. So it's not about the pursuit of technical perfection. The technical, that getting it in focus, getting it lit, deciding where it's going to be positioned within the thing, are tools which are helping me to convey a story. Let's say we were to take a different idea then. So this was, just briefly, right, on the notion of, say, shutter speed, right? So here what we've got is water being poured out, straight into a mug. Now, I've forgotten now, what was if I just hit, where's the properties on that? Details, the shutter speed on this one was 1/800th of a second, right? So on 1/800th of a second, it's sort of frozen the water, so it looks almost like glass. You can see all these kind of hard reflections in the downpour. Right, coming, and this almost looks like a kind of slight plastic film over it. If I go to this one was taken at something like 2,500th of a second, right? And at that point, the water isn't even being fully joined up. And as it's dropping in, it's sort of lifting up Okay, so by changing the shutter speed of exactly the same action, we've now changed the photo again. And you could go, now I don't have a slow shutter speed version of this, but imagine then that you took this at a fifth of a second or 2 seconds exposure. Right? At that point, it would be misty. Okay, you wouldn't even see the water drops. Okay, so here we're talking about the same mug, the same angle, the same action, water pouring into it, and you can change the whole narrative and story just by adjusting the shutter speed. Now, if you don't know how to adjust the shutter speed, you're limited on the number of stories you can tell. So knowing that helps. Now, if you just want to muck around with technicalities, you don't have to. I mean, the phones are great. We've talked about the phones many times, and I use these phones a lot, and, you know, I've got nothing against the phone. The limitation of the phone is the phone's going to decide for you what the shutter speed should be. Okay. Now, in a lot of cases, if shutter speed isn't one of the tools you need to use, then it doesn't matter. Right? If you're outdoors taking a picture of a dandelion on the grass and it's not windy, your shutter speed doesn't really matter. You're not going to worry about it. Right? But if you're talking about pouring water, if you're talking about waterfalls, if you're talking about tracking a car or a motorbike or some kind of moving object, then shutter speed becomes important. You don't have to have a full understanding of shutter speed in order to be able to take a good photo, because you can take a good photo where the shutter speed is irrelevant. But having a good understanding of shutter speed gives you an extra tool so that in a different set of circumstances, you can choose the shutter speed you need to convey the story you want to convey. Okay? Let's take this same megalicious mug, only we've now taken it away from the table and off the sink and we've hung it up, right? So here we are in our kitchen, we've got some cupboards, kitchen cupboards that kind of, you know, come out from the wall and overhang, and we've got screws in the bottom of them to hang the mugs on. And here we've got Meg's megalicious mug. And we've got my favourite little espresso cup done by local potter Claire Dawdry. In the background, we've got Meg's favourite flamingo mug. But the focus here is on the mug hanging on. And we know it's the megalicious mug is the one that's grabbing our attention first. So here the story isn't about a mug in isolation. It's about the mug in the context of other mugs. Perhaps I changed the angle, right? And now we've got the same little espresso cup here. We've got that same flamingo mug there. But now this is hanging, and the focal point is just on the front tip of this mug, right? Now then, it's changed again. Just changing the angle gives us a different feel, gives us a different mood. Maybe we can take this mug and we can have somebody drinking from it. Here is our lovely Meg, drinking from the megalicious mug, standing in front of the sink. There's the window behind her, which is casting the window light in all of these shots. Okay, now we're sort of having that sense of the mug in use, how it might be used. Okay, we can also do something like this. In this case, okay, here's our lovely Meg sitting at the table holding the megalicious mug. Now this, importantly, isn't about the mug. In this photo, because the attention goes straight to Meg and Meg's face and Meg's lovely smile, the photo is about Meg. Now the mug, we can see she's holding a mug, but the mug is out of focus. And because it's out of focus, it's a way of signalling to the person who's looking at it that it's not the important bit of the photo, right? So in this case, there is a mug, but the mug is a kind of supporting actor in the story. The primary focus of this is Meg, and not just Meg, but Meg's expression, right? And Meg's eyes. And the fact that we can see the eye on the right here is kind of in the shadow of her fringe. The eye on the left here is the one that, and on top of that, as well as having the eye in light and in focus, her arm comes up and her hand comes over, and it creates a leading line that draws you towards this eye as well. Okay, so the arm and the hand are drawing you up to this. The shadow is blocking off that one, so you still get drawn to this one. This eye is the bit that's in focus. So we have used focus, we've used leading lines, we've used light in order to draw our attention to a specific point. And what we were trying to get with this one is the warm smile of Meg holding the mug. So we've used the tool. Now, exactly the same position, exactly the same photo in every way, except I've now changed the point of focus. Now, this is about the mug. Okay? Now, Meg has gone from being the key point of the story. Now, Meg is the supporting actor. This is a picture of somebody holding a mug. Okay? So the core story of this is the megalicious mug, and there's a hand holding it, and there's somebody holding it. Really important points to understand. How are you taking the mug? How you're presenting it? And you've got all these different tools, and all these different tools are enabling you to tell all these different stories. So when somebody says, oh, it's all got to be, is it about the technicals? And if you get a technically perfect photo, then it's going to be boring. That's like saying if you've got a grammatically well-written sentence, the sentence is going to be boring. It might be boring if the only important thing about it is the grammar is right. Then it would be boring. But if the grammar is helping the story to the sentence to really, communicate what you want it to, then the grammar is doing its job. Okay, and it's a notion of the grammar doing its job, the technicalities doing their job. And if you understand what they're supposed to do and you learn them and you have them as your tools, then you use them to do the job. You do not allow the technicality to dictate to you, you dictate to them. You use them to communicate. You don't use them to restrict, because that makes no sense. That's like, you may as well write a sentence which is only full stops, capital letters, brackets and semicolons. Doesn't make any sense. You've got to have a content, right? What was that? Roland said, I've got to go and make a coffee. Yeah. Right. Okay. The ultimate in a mundane, everyday thing, right? A mug in the washing up bowl. Right? How many times have we sat there, have we stood there, washed up a mug? Right? 1,000,000 times. Can you make something interesting out of it? Yes, I think this is an interesting, I love this photo. There's something about this photo, right? We've got the window light. The window light is acting as a backlight. We've got this semicircle arch. We've got the handle coming up with a semicircle over here. Okay, so you've got these two complementary curves going on. The handle is moving up towards the top right corner. So we've got this diagonal, and as I've said many times before, a diagonal adds energy to something, right? The shallow depth of focus means that we've got, the front edge here, nice and crisp and sharp, and all those little bubbles looking really sharp and interesting, but very quickly it drops off and fades out. Okay, we become very aware of the little details, some of the, the indentations on the edge of the mug. Now, what's this about? This is, when I talk about the idea that an interesting photo, if you understand all these, if you've got, the more tools you have at your disposal, the more you can make anything interesting. If you can make a mug in a washing up bowl look interesting, you can make anything look interesting, right? But you've got to learn to see, and you've got to have these tools at your disposal. What Marcy says, suggestion for Anton, that photo you took of the sign with the moon behind and the carved guy on the sign lighting the lamp. Hope I explained well enough. Retake that photo at least once a week. Okay, that's... Okay, Marcy's going back now and talking to Anton about another photo he took with suggestions to go back and take lots of photos of it. And that's kind of part of it, yes. Marcy says the mug photo is a perfect example of a daily exercise. The more you do every single day, I go out for a walk and I've got my phone on me. And one of the things I try and do is take at least one photo of something while I'm out. Now, are these photos award-winning things that I'm going to be shoving up on Facebook or, putting into competitions? No. Very occasionally, yes. Very occasionally I come across something and I go, oh, I really like that. And I tidy it up a bit in the editing process and I'll shove it into a competition on Guru Shots or Photo Crowd or something like that. But actually, no. What it's about is a daily exercise. And just like if you're learning an instrument, you play scales. You don't play scales with the idea that you're going to play scales when you go on stage or when you perform for somebody else. You play scales so that you're creating a muscle memory, right? So that when you go to play, your hands and the instrument work together to enable you to express what it is you're trying to express. Artists who go about doing quick thumbnail sketches with a pencil are doing the same thing. They're practicing, they're learning to coordinate their brain, their eye with their hands in order to be able to give them a sense so that at the point they really need to draw something or paint something, they have these tools at their disposal. And we're doing the same thing. So yes, a daily exercise, just take photos, doesn't matter. They don't have to be great photos. Obviously you try and get the best photo you can, but the point is the taking of them. It's not about whether they are award winning. It's about the fact that you do it. And if you keep doing it day in, day out, your brain and your eye get better. Marcy likes the comparison to scales. Yeah. So, okay, let's go back to here. What else can we do? This one as an example then, I'm sitting in a cafe. And I just take a photo of the cup of coffee in front of me. Okay. Now, this particular one, I don't know whether anybody's ever going to have little memories. This one was taken during COVID, back at a time when you went to a cafe, you had to leave your name and number just in case there was some kind of outbreak in the cafe and they needed to contact you later. So hence the little pen and paper there. But there was something about the way the lights and steps, and this is at Kukubri Galleries, Susan will know this very well, and the little cafe area up on the first floor, the steps behind, and there was something I quite liked also. It's, I'm using the angles of the table, I'm using the shapes, but I'm getting the background out of focus because the focus is on the cup of coffee here, right? But at the same time, you can take a photo of a cup of coffee in a cafe. Where do you put the camera? How much of the background do you choose? Also, I've got a window to the left of me, which is giving this sort of slightly bluish light onto here. And I quite like that as a comparison to the yellowish light in the background. So you get these kind of complementary colour things going on. So understanding the fact that diagonals are a little bit more interesting meant that I angled the camera a little bit more so that there's diagonals going on with the edge of the table. And I angled it's not a completely round saucer, but it's not a completely square one either. It's a kind of, but I angled it so that again, we get these kind of sense of diagonals. Just shift the teaspoon slightly and suddenly you've got this diagonal coming down into the corner. Okay. So understanding these different ideas means that I'm able to take, and I took half a dozen different photos, slightly just moving, just taken with my phone, moving left or right or whatever, focusing slightly forward or back. But this understanding that I could do that meant that once I'd done that, I managed to get a photo, which is kind of fun. It's okay. It gives you that sense of sitting in the cafe. You can practically smell the coffee. You can kind of hear the sounds going on around you. Okay. What about, now there was another one, there was a bit where somebody was talking about the notion of colour theory. And I've heard this talked about before as well, is if you want, how much do you need to know? Colours also can become something which you can really have a lot of, both with colour and absence of colour. So what I'm going to run you through here is, again, some of you may recognise I've used this from before. So on this occasion, I was at a different cafe. That had this wonderfully bright yellow crockery. I had an espresso and there was this blue tablecloth. And so just like the other one before, get out your phone, boom, shoot straight down. Okay. So love the circles, love the shape. I angle it slightly. So again, with the teaspoons. So although this is working on the idea of symmetry, it's smack bang in the middle. It's not a rule of thirds one. Okay. I'm going for a symmetry technique, symmetry tool here rather than the thirds tool. Okay. So I'm using the symmetry. I've edited it, cropped it. So it's exactly in the middle of the picture. We've got concentric circles coming out from the coffee to the residue around the side, to the top of the cup, to the saucer. But I also know that notion of asymmetry, a little asymmetrical bit dot of some kind in a symmetrical thing can change it. So I put the teaspoon at this angle and that lifts it. And I've done examples of this before in the past in other ones where I've removed the teaspoon and I've removed the little handle, and it's okay, but it's duller. It doesn't work as powerfully as having these little bits just coming out of it. So yellow and blue, but it doesn't have to be yellow and blue. Quick play around in Photoshop, I can make it orange and blue. Right? Let's go complementary colours. We've all heard of complementary colours. Complementary colours, and there are places where, now, yellow and blue is great for for Anton. For Gunilla, who's just come back from Sweden, Swedish colour flag, right? Yellow and blue. Complementary colours would say orange and blue. And interestingly, I have found when I put these, when I've experimented over the years with likes of PhotoCrowd and Guru Shots, these online photography sites where they have lots of competitions and are crowd voting, the orange and blue consistently outdoes the yellow and blue. The yellow and blue doesn't do bad, but the orange and blue does better. Right? Now, you might have a personal preference for the yellow over the orange, or the orange over the yellow, but if you're talking about a wide spread of people across time, that percentage-wise, the orange does better. Another complementary colour, red and green. Now, to be honest, this one just makes my eyes hurt. I don't really like this, but there are times when there are particular kinds of photos, where you are going bright and colourful and you're really trying to put the energy across. So while I don't particularly like this on a personal taste, it also depends what you're trying to promote. If you're trying to really ramp up the energy to sell something high energy, yay, then this does it more than this. Okay, this is a slightly softer energy. This is a really hard energy. And that energy is being changed by the colours. We can go another complementary colour, which is yellow and purple. Okay. So yellow and purple has a different mood and feel. This yellow and purple's got a different energy to the yellow and blue, or the orange and blue, or the red and green. And that's complementary colours. What if we go same colours? What about yellow on essentially gold? Okay. Even that kind of works. It's a different kind of thing. It only really works essentially because of the white around the rim of the cup. Take that away and it would just be overkill. But that helps break it up along with the handle of the spoon, right? But it still becomes interesting. But you can tell, I mean, what an energy difference between having a yellow background, a yellow on yellow, yellow on purple and a yellow on yellow, right? Or strip away the colour in the background altogether. Just go yellow on black. Whoa, there's a difference. Right? Yellow and black. I mean, yellow and black is almost like warning sign. It's wasps, it's bees, it's a construction site. Yellow and black. There's a warning thing there. It's a totally different mood. We now turn the back. Or maybe you want to go red and black. Okay, go back to that red. Keep the background black. Can you see how each different colour and each different colour combination is having a profound effect on the mood and the energy of the image as it's being portrayed? So is it just about the cup? The colour we've done with that cup, even once we've decided it's this angle, it's this composition, it's these circles, it's this lighting, by changing the colour, we are profoundly changing the energy and the mood of what's being conveyed. So this is the really important kind of thing to understand, that if you understand colours, it's another tool in your toolbox, just like understanding symmetry, just like understanding asymmetry. Right? Or we can go black and white. I'll fiddle around with it a little bit. I mean, you can see here that's just essentially reflection, bit of light coming in, and probably a bit of head in the shadow or whatever it is. I manipulated it slightly and went just black and white, went yin yang. Okay, a little bit of fun now with the black and white, and I've darkened the that yellow so that it's gone almost black. Okay, so we end up with kind of very dark circle, dark circle, lighter hint, darker hint, and then a little dot here and there. Okay, so yin yang espresso. So as well as colour is the understanding when not to use colour. Okay, You can play around. Still life. Let's just go still life for a moment. The battered old espresso pot with another little espresso cup, different kind of thing, kitchen cupboard in the background, window light coming in. Again, looking down from the top here, now what we have is we have a Sudoku puzzle, a pen, an eraser, right? This particular tablecloth has dotted circle patterns on it, which are then echoing kind of the circle of the mug itself as you're looking down to it. So you can play around with still life. Or if you want to go still life, some of those who may remember a few years ago when I did a still life podcast specifically about it, we create playing around with coffee, right? So in this one, I've got a blue cloth, I've got a mocha pot, got that lovely little Claire Daughtry espresso cup, covered it in coffee beans. Okay, window light coming in from the left. So we now have a still life playing around with the cup and the espresso pot. Okay, now the cup itself is now playing. It's not the focal. It's not the kind of key actor as such. But this is more of an ensemble piece, right? Where the mocha pot, the cup, and the coffee beans are all working together. Now, you need all of them for the whole thing to work. Remove any of them and it doesn't work so well. But here, the cloth was naturally blue. But I could just as easily change that cloth to red. Okay, again, change the energy of it by having it red instead of blue. Change the energy of it again by having it brown. Okay, now it's the brown kind of almost intensifies the sense of the coffee. So, where are we at? My God, I've been talking for about 3/4 of an hour on this. Way longer than I intended to. The point with all this is tools, not rules. If you get somebody turning around and saying, the photo has to conform to a particular set of rules, otherwise it's no good. Well, what rules? Which rules? Which rules under which circumstances? There's no universal rule that works under every single circumstances. There's an amazing photo that I've suddenly, for the life of me, can't remember who took it, but it's a war photo, and it's grainy, and it's out of focus, and it's in black and white, and it is one of the most powerful photos you will ever see, right? But it also works because it might be out of focus and it might be grainy and but it works because of other things in that photo that are working. And so it's not that there are single rules. What you have is a multiple of tools, and which tools you use. And there's no universal tool that gets used for everything. Rulez says Don McCullin. Possibly could also be Robert Capa. Can't remember. But yes, Don McCullin's really good for doing black and white photos as well, where sometimes he apparently breaks some rules. But all he's doing is he's not rules, it's tools. He's not using certain tools. Whenever somebody says they've broken the rules with photography, they haven't. They've just not using particular tools. Okay? And it drives me nuts when everybody says, hey, I broke the rules in photography and my photography. It's got nothing to do with breaking rules. It's about what tools you're using. Okay? It's like saying, hey, I put together this amazing shelf and I didn't use a hammer. Therefore, how brilliant, you don't need a hammer. Yeah, maybe you managed to put it together because the wood you were using, the way you put it together. But fine. For another job, you're going to need a hammer. For another job, you're going to need a saw. So, huge amounts of energy gone into this. You can tell I feel quite passionate. This overlaps with, remember back in spring, and back in March, I think it was, I did an episode, 35 different ways to photograph a daffodil. It's the same kind of idea here, that as soon as you start thinking that as soon as anybody turns around and says, you've broken the rules, you've not done the rules right. What rules? It's like you've not used the right tools for it. You've just, you use the tools you need for the job that you want to do. You have an idea, you want to express that idea so that somebody looking at this picture picks up on the idea that you were expressing. And if you use these tools here from everything from your understanding of composition, light, shutter speed, aperture, ISO, editing techniques, crops, masking, lightening, darkening, shadows, all these things. You use all of these to heighten and emphasize the story you want to tell. And every single time any of you send me images for critique, feedback, you send me an image for feedback, that's my starting point, is you're trying to convey some kind of story. How well have you done it? How short have you fallen from that? Why have you fallen short? What tools might have we used in order to help you convey that message more strongly? And that is what I do with feedback. Okay. So thank you, Anton, for sending in that, for that thing. I think it's just, I really do feel it's one of the most important aspects to truly understand what, photography is, to understand. Yeah. And like I said, you can start off, you don't have to understand everything. You just start off with something. You start off with what you do know. If you only have a hammer, start hammering things. It's fun. Okay. Start knocking nails into anything you find. It's fun. And, unless you're knocking the house down. Okay. But then branch out, learn more as you go. And the more you learn, the more you have available to you. Okay. So let's have a breather. Let's just have our little kind of middle eight. So now what I want to talk about, we'll just do the little break where I'll talk about, let's do the Smug Points update. Okay. So Smug Points. Yeah. Okay. Smug Points were the fun part of last month. Okay. So we got to July, we got to the end of July. We had the live music challenge. I went away. I added everything up. And, Gord's joined us and says, hello, everyone. Hi, Gord. Glad you could make it. Right. So Smug Points. Yes, so we got to July and it was a 3-way tie. Okay, Susan, Andy and Robert were all on 70 Smug Points each. How do I decide a winner? Okay, so this was a tough one. So I hummed and hawed about this one and chatted with Maggie and kind of was working it out. And then I kind of realised that ultimately the whole point of Smug Points, you get awarded Smug Points for contributions. So here, anybody here leaving a comment now, right, you get 5 Smug Points. If you put in an image for a challenge, you get 10 Smug Points. If you put in an image for critique or feedback, you get 25 Smug Points. Okay. Also, because of Anton starting this whole conversation, what this is about, he's getting a bonus 25 Smug Points as well. So something that kind of is enabling me to create a chunk of podcasts is going to get Smug Points. So we end up with, so it's 3-way tie, but so how was I going to decide? And ultimately what it came down to was Susan and Andy both contributed to two episodes last month, where they put in for a challenge and also they were there to chat about, so they were leaving comments on one and putting images into a challenge on the other. Robert, on the other hand, took part in 3. Okay, so Robert took part in 3 episodes. The other 2 took part in 2, so that became the tiebreaker. So therefore, I deemed Robert the winner. So congratulations to Robert for winning the Smug Points challenge. That meant that he gets to choose the topic for August. Now, I'll remind you again at the end of the podcast, but basically, he's chosen the topic of cars. So in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to talk about photographing cars and different ways you can play around with it. And you can take on board everything I've just been telling you, right? Even if you think, oh, what's interesting in a car? Remember, you can make a cup in a washing up bowl look interesting. You can find an interesting way to photograph a car. So I will be doing that. In the meantime, though, next week will be the 300th episode, and I'll come back to that. Just a quick thing as well, just to say that on the Smug Point, Sandy was in second place for 60, Roland had 55, and VG, Gunilla and Anton were all on 50 each. So it really was everything to play for. And the notion that the more you contribute to these through your comments, through your sending me images for critique, challenges, all this kind of stuff, the more chance there is of you accumulating the most Smug Points for a month and therefore getting to choose the topic which really means something to you rather than trying to fit in with anybody else's. Right, okay. A quick little reminder, if you find these podcasts useful, interesting, entertaining, buymeacoffee.com/Ayres is one of the ways you can contribute. And don't forget, yeah, if you've enjoyed what we're doing, click a like. If you haven't done it already, please like the and tell your friends as well. Where are we? Oh, Marilyn says, wonderful info, a lot to think about and practice. Yeah, I mean, the other thing with it, bookmark this one if you want, make a set, come back, listen to it again and again, whenever you need to. Whenever you go, well, what am I doing photography for? Why do I need to learn any of these things? Come back and listen to it. Susan says, what an impactful session, very informative. I'll try not to mention rules ever again. Meg says, congratulations, Robert. Lisa says, yes, very helpful podcast. Sandy says, excellent explanation. You made that so easy to understand. Oh, well, that's good to know. Excellent. Yeah, okay. Right, what we're going to do now then is we're going to move on to Gunilla, because Gunilla sent in an image for us to take a look at, for me to take a look at. And then I will tell you all about next week. And next week is the 300th episode. So stick around because I need your input. Okay, I need your input. And if you give me your input, you will get a bonus 10 smug points. So what are we talking about? Let me dig up and find Gunilla's picture. So Gunilla sent in, no, not that, this image. So what we have here is Gunilla says, this was journeying out, right. Now, she was coming home from Sweden when she sent this. She said, I don't have my computer with me, but managed to download a picture on my camera to my mobile phone and process it in Lightroom on the phone. So on July the 25th, so only just a week ago, a concert where Ronan Keating sang a couple of old hits from his Boyzone era. I sat at the back of the park where the concert took place, so I had to zoom in a great deal. The photo became very small when downloaded, so the quality is poor. Do you think it is unbalanced with him alone on one side and three persons on the other, and what could I have done better? So, excuse me, let me take another swig here. So what's happened here then is Gunilla's sitting at the back of the park, music event going on. Ronan Keating from Boyzone comes on, sings a few of the favourite songs where anybody of a certain age is going to be crooning along with him. But she's had to zoom in. So there's, we go in a little bit and the quality isn't really there to, out of focus. But as a kind of snapshot memory, hey, I was there, look, there's Ronan, it does the job as a gateway to a memory. But in terms of composition, does it work quite as well? And this is, and I think you're right to question it, because ultimately it does feel like we've got this space. Ronan's there, he's nice and clear. There's quite a bit of space to his left. Now that would be all right, except for the fact it does feel like everything's cramped up on the right. Okay, the next problem, on top of that, there's a cello here, which then is in the picture, but then disappears out. And so it kind of makes us feel like everything's squashed up against it. And unfortunately, something you couldn't do anything about, we've got this microphone stand running right through the middle of the guitarist's face. Now, trying to remove that in Photoshop is going to be really difficult because half his nose is hidden and, chances are it will replace it with a different nose. So ultimately, yes, this does feel unbalanced. Now, I asked Gunilla if she had another photo which she could send. And here's one which gives you a bigger sense of the full stage. And I have to say, I prefer this. I quite like the heads down the bottom here. Showing you that you're in concert, and then you've got the band over here, and then you see over here we've got that cello and a bit of a drum kit behind here. But now if we zoom into something like this, okay, I think that's a better kind of crop, really. So I tell you what, let's just open this. So where's the open with? I'll open this in Photoshop. Just to play around with the crop for a moment. Okay, so I will actually change the workspace about so we can see this. And ultimately, with something like this, you're either going to go for Ronan in the middle, in which case we just kind of nudge him over like that. So you're going for that simply. You just edge. I don't know how much that needs. Yeah, just needs tilting a fraction. So something like that, and in which case what we've got his band members on the right, we've got the orchestra on the left, balancing out with the, so this is going for that kind of symmetry side of it. But if you were going to go for that slightly more asymmetrical thing where you were here, now your other crop was basically more or less that. Okay, in fact, I think you were cropped out. So when you end up with this, the balance just it just feels too squeezed up on one side. So if I undo that, what I would suggest with your crop is, if you were going to crop him here, you still need to have that bit. Even if you want to take out the audience, that's fine. You want to pull down that bit at the top there. But rather than, because you've got this space on the left, you need a kind of similar space on the right. And the problem was these people were feeling crumpled up into the corner. And this cello is pretty much large enough to have the equivalence in the picture of another person. Okay, so what we want on this side is a gap, the equivalent space between the back of the cello and the edge of the photo, as we have of the back of Ronan and the side of this photo. Okay, and then that allows it, he can occupy the left third of it, the band can occupy the middle over to the right third, the cello can sit in the right third of the photo. And as a kind of balancing act, I think that probably works better for what you were trying to achieve in your original photo here. Okay, that was the unedited version. Yeah, edited version. So I hope that makes sense, Gunilla. Not a huge amount to say on it, but I think ultimately, if you're talking about where to crop, I think that's really kind of where you're at. And as you can see, you know, what we're talking about again is, once you understand a certain sense of the notion of balance, of cropping, of you know, we're using, in this case, rule of thirds, tool of thirds. It helps us to kind of work out, so what is it you're trying to express? You're trying to, because the thing is about this picture isn't just about him. It's about him with his band members. And you're getting in the fact that he's looking over. Okay, there's a connection going on. And that's part of what you're trying to capture. But because it feels squashed in on this side, it's not operating as well as it could. So if we want to get that kind of balance to it, then when we have it like this, now we get that sort of better sense of something happening and we can feel the size of it. So yeah, hope that all makes sense, Gunilla. And yeah, thank you for sending that one in. Oh yeah, Gunilla says yes, much better. Great. Right, okay, so thank you then to Anton for kickstarting that big piece of the first part of the podcast, and thank you to Gunilla for sending in those images. Both of them will get 25 bonus Smug points, so that's already put you ahead of the game then for accumulation for August. Right, now, what's coming up in August? So, as I said, next week is the 300th episode. Okay, now 300th episode. I've been thinking for a while about what I was going to do, how I was going to go about it. And what I ultimately came up with was the idea of Ask the Photographer, right? Turning the tables a little bit. What happens is, all the time is I'm giving you feedback on your images, you're telling me things, I'm trying to find solutions for you. Not that I'm looking for solutions, but this is your opportunity to find out more about me, to ask me photographic style questions. So what you might want to do is, you know, you might be interested, maybe you want to know a little bit about, okay, Kim, what's your journey? How did you get into photography? How did you get into the podcast? Well, what have been key points along the way? Maybe you want to know about the equipment. What's in my toolkit? You know, what camera do I use? What lenses do I use? What's the most common lens I use? What obscure little lenses that I've got that I never get around to using, but always meant to? Maybe you're also, there's another thing here, which I will leave a link to in the comments, in the description rather, which is, let me just go and drag this over here. And are there particular images that you are interested in as well. And what I will do is I will give a link to my Flickr account. Okay, now, so my Flickr account, here, I've got a whole bunch of albums of stuff. So there's narrative photography, portraits, artists and makers, musicians, images that have been used for magazine and album covers, drag queens, collaborations with particular people or organizations, behind the scenes videos, even cinematic style images. There's overlap. There's some images that appear in more than one album. But if you go and take a look, so we open up the narrative photography. So we've got a couple of musicians, we've got the drag queens, we've got Cluedo shoot, we've got steampunk, we've got the kind of indie cinema style photos, we've got fashion shoots, got woodland shoots, got shoots in the bath, there's car stories. There's loads of photos here, you know, woman in a wheelchair underwater, okay? It was a composite. And so it goes on. There's loads of photos that I've done. So I run these podcasts, and there is you know, I'm a photographer, I'm a professional photographer. And with my professional photography, people pay me to create interesting photos with it. I'm not a high street photographer. I'm not a wedding photographer. My speciality tends to be in creating stories, sometimes big narratives, cinematic, theatrical style, where you're talking about what lighting do we use, what props do we use, what outfits do we use, what background and locations do we use. And sometimes it's about capturing people at work, where it's literally just handheld, moving in and out, looking for the interesting little stories and moments, documenting and embedding and what have you. And so I've got a whole range of photos that I do, but I didn't start out like this. I only started my photography journey less than 20 years ago. I was in my 40s before I took up photography with any real kind of energy for it and desire for it, beyond just taking a few family snapshots. So if there are particular photos that you think, oh, that's interesting, what were your decisions behind that? Why did you make these lighting calls? Why did you edit it in that way? What was the story behind that photo? Go and have a dive into my Flickr account, look around, and then send me your questions. Okay, so where are we? Just like if you're sending me images for critique or feedback or for a challenge, so use the kimayresgmail.com, kimayrespodcast@gmail.com email address. I set that up specifically for these podcasts. Send me a question. If there's a particular photo from my Flickr account that you want to know more about, put a link into that and say, tell me about this, and tell me what is it you're most interested about? Is it you're wanting to know about the lighting? Is it you're wanting to know about the editing? Is it you're wanting to know about how on earth I ended up photographing a couple wearing steampunk with a leather dragon blowing smoke inside a gin distillery? You know, if you want to know about the stories behind any of these things, if you want to know about decisions I made about any of these things, if you want to find out more about the kind of photography I do and why I do it, and the journey I've been on to get to why I do what I do, and the equipment that I use and all that kind of stuff, it's an ask me anything, right? Anything to do with photography, ask the photographer. That's what the 300th episode is going to be about. So the more in advance you can send me these questions, the better. Now, fine, if on the day when we're doing this next Sunday, ideas crop up to you, you can drop them into the chat and ask me the questions. But it's also useful for me if you can send me any in advance to the Gmail address, because certainly if it's to do with specific photos or things like that, it's easier if I can go and drag them out and pull them up so I can talk about them as an example, rather than going, oh, they've asked me about this photo. Where did I put that photo? I can't remember. So the more in advance you can ask me, or also if there's particular questions which I might struggle off the top of my head to remember, if you give me advance notice of the question, then I can make sure that I've got an answer for you. Okay. Oh, Robert's joined us and says, sorry to be late, overslept so much you've missed most of the podcast. You can go back and have fun with it though later. But yes, you do get your 5 points for having turned up right at the last moment there, Robert. So yes, as I say, go to the Flickr account and find an image if you want, and then you can ask me all about that. So next week then, 300th episode, you ask the photographer. So ask me any questions related to photography. And like I say, if you can email me a question in advance, that makes my life a lot easier. And the early already started. Marcy's already sent me a question or two. I mean, send me more than one question. There's a good chance that more than one person will ask me the same question. So I can kind of sift through, find the ones that, so 6 people ask me the same question. I know that one goes at kind of the top of the pile. So that's fine. So I hope you find that interesting and you can, have a little bit of fun with that. Now, for the rest of the month, so next week's the 300. This is a 5 podcast month. So that means on episode 301, Robert, having won the July accumulated Smug points, and like I say, has chosen the topic cars. So episode 301 will be all about ways of photographing cars, things to think about, ways to sort of approach it. That, of course, will lead on to a car photo challenge, which will be episode 303, which will end up at I think it's the 30th of August. So we're going to talk about cars in 2 weeks, and in 5 weeks, we'll have the car photo challenge. And in between, in 3 weeks' time, episode 302 will be a feedback session. So if you want feedback on your particular photo, and you've got a bit stuck and you're not sure how to really get across the narrative that you desperately want to achieve, you feel it's falling short in some way, send it to me, tell me what your sticking points are, tell me what you're trying to achieve, and I will do my best to bring all the skills and knowledge and tools that I have to help you get past that sticking point. And because when I help you, that automatically helps everybody else who's watching, who suddenly goes, oh yeah, I had that problem with my photo as well. Oh, I could apply it to that thing over there. You get that bonus 25 Smug points for contributing. Right, I think that's us. Right, so thank you ever so much to Anton for sending in give me his question, to Gunilla for her picture, for the feedback, to all of you sitting here, taking this on board, contributing, writing questions, leaving comments, all that kind of stuff. And I look forward to the questions that you're going to send me. Slightly daunting, I have to say. Suddenly, it's all about me. Funny, it might seem like a funny thing to say because in some ways these podcasts are all about me, but I don't think of them as all about me. I think of them as all about you. And that's why this episode next week feels so different to me, because all these podcasts for me are all about you. You sitting here, you individually, not you as a group, but each of you individually, right? You send me your questions, you interact, and I'm doing these podcasts for you, and my focus is entirely on you. So the idea of suddenly turning this around so that you can focus on me and ask me questions does feel a little bit daunting. It's a bit like being a portrait photographer and then suddenly having to be on the other side of the camera. But hey, we've done 300 episodes. Some of us pretty much all together. I mean, Robert's been around since about episode 20 or something like that. VG couldn't join us today, but she's been around since about episode 3, I think. So, so your turn to actually put it on me. Right. Okay. So, yeah. Look forward to it all. Last couple of comments. Robert saying hot in North Texas. And yes, Susan says Toolz, not rules, with a Z. Yeah, absolutely. Time to get the t-shirt printed up, Susan. Gunilla says, show us the war photo you talked about. Problem with that, I will say the problem is I don't tend to show somebody else's photos unless it's one of yours that you've sent to me, because I'm not 100% sure on the copyright, on usage rights and stuff like that. So I do tend to stick to my own photos as examples, or photos that have been sent specifically into here. I can't remember exactly. I might track it out, in which case I could put a link to it and then send it to you. But I'm wary about showing anybody else's photos that haven't specifically given me permission to do so on the podcast. All right, Marcy says Tool of Turds is a great t-shirt. Right, well, you can go for that one. Lisa says thanks so much, and Gunilla says okay, I understand. Brilliant. Right, okay. See you all next week. Look forward to the questions you send me for the 300th episode. Take care. Bye-bye.